to Family Life Ministries to their Christmas play. That was always very good. And people came from all over the state to it because the radio reaches so many people now that they heard it advertised and they came. Among them was Mark and Gail. I was so surprised. I sat there waiting for the program to start, and there stood Mark. I was so pleased to see him, and Gail was there, and she came down and talked a while to me, too. Christmas was coming. Gerald came and put up my porch lights, and I put up my Christmas tree, decorated it, and got things ready like I always do. For my birthday, Bruce and Aaron took me to Ponderosa, and we met Dick and Jerry there. And that was always nice to do. I was glad to see them and enjoyed being together with them. Debbie had to work. I went to Deb's at night. I helped Debbie get ready for the gathering, for the Christmas gathering. I had a nice time there, and Christmas Day we had a beautiful dinner like we always do. Debbie doesn't have to work on Christmas Day. Pat and Bob got there for the Christmas like they always do, and she and I got the things all ready for the Christmas Day get-together. That was on the 28th this year. And there was a nice crowd. We had 42 there to eat. And that was usually, it's right around 40 usually. So it was a very nice day. I always enjoy seeing all the family and all the new babies. And it's always an enjoyable time. I went home and got things packed ready, so when I went to Pat's, I'd be all ready. I got my refrigerator emptied and so forth, and then went back over to Debbie's. We started New Year's Day. The school, Pat's school, started the 3rd, so we had to, she wanted one day between when she got home and school starting. On the 2nd of January, we went shopping to look over the sales to see if she could get some things for Christmas for next year. She always does that. That's a good way to get Christmas tree decorations and paper plates and that type of thing that you have when you have a Christmas get-together. Pat went to school and I got things around to get things ready for supper. And we had scalloped potatoes. We had scalloped potatoes quite a lot. It was a favorite of the family. Bruce and Aaron were supposed to get here for supper, but they didn't make it. They called later and said that they got so tired that they were going to sleep in the van and come on the next day. They got here the next morning at 7 o'clock. They'd already had breakfast when they got there, so they didn't eat with us. Bob had to work in the forenoon, but in the afternoon he and Bruce went around and he took him through the new BMW plant that just moved into South Carolina and different places that they wanted to go. We played games at night. There's a new game with dominoes, with 12, number 12 dominoes. That was altogether different, called Mexican Train dominoes. It's a lot of fun, similar to the old-fashioned one, but much more complicated. Bruce doesn't enjoy games, but Aaron does, and we all played and had fun. Lawrence Welk was on the television reruns, and we all enjoyed them. I started on Matt's quilt and cut blocks for that and put them together. Each block takes quite a long time, so I usually didn't do but one a day. Kathy and Jerry had a trailer down here now, and they were working at that. It was really dirty. Had cockroaches even in the freezer. There was cockroaches. It was a very dirty one. Kathy was working full time, so Jerry and I worked in the trailer cleaning that up. I only helped in the kitchen because I couldn't do any lifting or anything like that, but I cleaned the refrigerator and the stove and the sink and like that. That helped some. On the 18th of January, they had dinner for Scott and Penny, and Kathy was invited. They all came, but on the way to the dinner, I fell, crashed down like a ton of bricks. And they took me to the hospital. Scott was here, so he was officiated just like he does on his regular work. And the x-ray showed I had a broken shoulder. I kept them busy because Bruce and Aaron were here, and Kathy, and of course Pat and Bob, and getting me to the bathroom. It hurt me so terrible to walk because my back and legs pained a lot more than my shoulder did. The x-rays technician said probably I had injured the sciatic nerve. It was nice having Bruce and Aaron here. Bruce was so good to help me, and Pat was so patient. I was ashamed to have to be so much work for them. Kathy came over quite often and went to church with Pat and Bob, and Bruce and Aaron went to a Wesleyan church in Malden. They enjoyed that. Bruce helped Jerry some around the trailer, putting the skirt around the trailer and helped him get things into the trailer, and Bob went and helped get the washing machine in. Things that Jerry couldn't do alone. About this time, we had a letter from Carolyn. She was rejoicing because Doug had accepted the Lord. He was always such a nice boy, but he just didn't want to take Christ into his life. But now he had, and we were all rejoicing over that. I later had a nerve block shot in my back, and at first I couldn't see any difference, and all at once the pain stopped, or was much, much less. I was so grateful for that. Gerald came down with a load of furniture for Kathy for her trailer, and they came over here for supper. He said Virginia Francis had died. I felt so bad over that. She suffered so much, and she was a nice person. And Bruce and Aaron went back to Texas to be with Paul and Arlene again, and Dick and Jerry came up. It was always nice having Geraldine here, too. Dick went back to Hepzibah, where he was helping with getting the ground ready for the new children's home there. Geraldine stayed about 2 weeks, and it was so nice having her here. And we had a good time together. She, like a nurse, and she helped a lot. And Pat, of course, Pat wasn't here. She was working. Geraldine went back to Macon with a lady from Raleigh that was going there. So Pat took her over to meet the lady. And she went back, and Pat and Bruce and Aaron came back. The doctor had given an order for me to have a walker. And so the guy that came to bring it was real young, I imagine just out of high school, and I thought he acted like maybe this was his very first delivery, because he had a little speech all learned about how I had to be careful to always make sure it was locked before I used it, and just how to walk with it, and just a little piece that he learned. He was very shy and acted scared to death. Then Bruce said, well, of course this wouldn't have happened if she hadn't come down that hill so fast on her skateboard. And that poor guy's mouth dropped down, and he looked from one to another, and I said, well, I had my knee pads and everything on. And then he said, well, I guess I've covered it all. So now if you have any questions, there's a number there for you to call. And he left in a hurry. I think he thought he better get away from this bunch of coots as fast as he could. We've always laughed over that poor guy. But I'm sure he must have run into other people just as kooky as we are. Geraldine caught a ride up again with some people from the First Wesleyan Church here in Greenville. And so that was always nice having her here. She did the little things that Pat didn't have time for, and Pat was real sick for a while now. Had a real bad cold. She had to stay home from school. And she stayed in bed quite a lot of the time. I was so glad Geraldine was here. One of the teachers had a wheelchair that her mother had used, and Pat borrowed that, and so that helped a lot getting me around, and also I could use the walker good now. Dick called that they'd be up the next day, and I could go home with them. This is the last of March now. So I got my stuff all packed and ready. We started about 7:50 in the morning and had a good trip. Went home, no problems. We stayed all night in Winchester in Virginia at a Howard Johnson motel. And then went on and got back here home about 1:30. Dick and Jerry stayed there a while until Deb got home from work. I could help some at Deb's with the work, filling the dishwasher and emptying it, and picking up and dusting and so forth. I went to Buena Vista to church some of the time, and sometimes Bruce came that way and took me to the Haskinville church. That was when Pastor Adam was there to candidate as a pastor. So I wanted to go that Sunday to hear him. Kevin and Cindy came and spent a day and a night at Debbie's. It was so nice to see them. They caught us up on all the work there in Germany. about the Newark and Czechoslovakia, and visited a lot. A little girl, even though she's had to go through these surgeries. And while they were there, they got their first ostrich egg. That was an exciting time. I stayed at Dad's and helped her with folding clothes and doing the dishes and so forth. Once in a while, I went over to my house and stayed overnight, and Kathy came up and stayed there overnight so I could. It was nice. I'm glad to be in my own home once in a while. The ostriches' names were Wilma and Mary. Mary laid quite a few eggs, and she had laid 12, and they said, well, probably that's all she'll lay. That's usually what they lay for a season. But then she laid several more after that. We figured must be she can't count. David and Beth were home for a little while, and they came over and spent quite a while in the afternoon with us there at Debbie's. It was so nice to see them, hear about his work and what she's doing. I went over home again. Debbie took me over and I cleaned cupboards, and Bonnie DuBois came and did the mopping and the vacuuming like that, so that helped. Carolyn Lloyd came and stayed all day. And Kim's daughter Maria was getting married in the church, so we went to that. It was nice. I got to see Kia again. I hadn't seen her in a long time. And then we went to Kim's for the reception. It was small, not very many people there, but it was real nice, and I was glad to see them all again. Kathy and her husband came over to Debbie's at night and brought their picnic supper with them. They wanted to see the ostriches, and the kids wanted to watch them. So then I visited with Kathy and her husband. I hadn't seen them. That was nice. Sometimes I rode over with Deb to Arkport when she took the eggs over. And it was always a nice ride and a chance to see Deb a little more. She's always so busy around home there. And so she took an egg over, and when she got there, they told her she had a surprise, and she got in there, and they showed her first baby ostrich. It was a weird-looking little thing, but he was a nice, healthy little bird. Pat came up to Debbie's for a while in June. And in the afternoon, we all went to Dick's to see the twins, and Stephen and Kara, and their new baby. We had a nice time, nice visit with Carol and Lloyd. They were there, too. Pat came over to my house, and she stayed all night, did some sorting for me, and cleaned out the stairway closet. Got a pile full of stuff, and it was hard for me to get in there. Juanita had been down getting her hair done, and she stopped. So she stayed for lunch with us, and Pat was so pleased. She hadn't seen her in a long time. She said she's always so glad when she gets up here and sees other members of the family besides just us that she came to visit. We had a farewell dinner for Pastor Jay. It was nice. He talked so nice about all of us regular members and said things about us that he appreciated. We had a good dinner. Pat went up there with me. She usually goes over with Debbie if she's here on a Sunday. Pat went to the baccalaureate with Debbie, but I didn't go. By then I was tired. We all went up to Kathy's for lunch, and then Pat and Debbie and Elizabeth all went over to see the Scythe tree and took some pictures of it. It's quite a sight to think that my grandfather put that scythe up in the tree when he was cutting a field of grain up there with it. That would have been about 1908 or 7 or 8. My grandfather was very old then, but he still did hard work. Pat helped me get ready to go to camp, and she took me down there and stayed overnight and left after Carolyn and Lloyd got there. I always stay in camp with them in my cottage. Carolyn does the cooking, and we go to the services together. I about have to have somebody with me to help me get in the car and so forth. The services were very good, and we enjoyed them all. I got hanging baskets for Mother's Day for my porch, and I kept noticing a bird flying out of one of them, but I just thought it was sitting there and resting or something. But I had somebody take it down, and there were 4 eggs in there, and I thought, oh boy, this is going to be something. We kept watching the bird. She was faithful, coming and sitting on the eggs. I looked in the bird book, and according to the bird book, it was a purple finch or a house finch. Both of them had the same kind of eggs. They were small birds. And I watched them. Finally, all the birds flew away. We had a job watering them because I always had to have somebody come lift it down so I could water them and not splash the eggs all with water. It was interesting anyway. Bruce always picks me up for everything we go to, but I didn't get down to Bruce's house very often. Kathy went down there, and I stayed there while she did some errands. It was so nice. Bruce had put new siding on his house, and it just looked so nice and new, looking like a different house. And he built a new, bigger front porch. It just changed the appearance so much. The last of July, we had the family picnic again. Dick and Jerry came the night before and stayed all night, so Geraldine was there to help me get ready for it. We all went to church, and then there was a nice crowd at the picnic. There were 45 there this year. It was so nice. It was a nice day, warm, but not too hot. It was just right. We had a little baby shower for Chris at the picnic because we couldn't figure any time they could all get together any other time, so they all brought their gifts there, and she came and opened them. Paul and Arlene were here, so that made it nice. Had it, well, they were up from Texas. Then we heard that Chris had a baby boy, so I went over to the hospital to see him. Bruce took me over. That was so nice. He was a beautiful little boy. So glad that Chris has got her boy. Isaac came home for a little while from California. It was so nice to see him. He's grown up a lot. He came in 2 or 3 times to see me, and they went to Albany to see Grandma Curry. Chris couldn't go back to work for 6 weeks, so she came up quite often and brought the baby. That was so nice. I enjoyed that. Cute little thing. Isaac came in quite a few times while he was here. Of course, I always enjoy seeing him. Everybody's so nice about picking me up as long as I don't drive anymore. Evelyn came and took me over to her house for supper with Charlotte Weaver went to. And they picked me up for garden club, so I didn't miss them. I have such good friends, and so many people around the neighborhood has offered me rides to church and so forth. This is a nice neighborhood. Bruce and Aaron came up to say goodbye. They were going to Texas again and for a visit to Paul. It was always nice to have them come be up here because they stop in and see me and take me places too. Now I miss them. November is here now, and Elizabeth's birthday, she's 16. Debbie had a nice party for her. They did a different year thing. Like the kitchen was in the 50s, where they first come in from the hayride, and then the next room was the 60s and 70s, and the pool table room was the 80s, and the living room was in the 90s. They had 3 TVs going with little Nintendo games on, and Elizabeth opened her gifts too. There were 40 kids here. I had a good time too. I stayed the next day and helped a little with the cleanup, and then I went back home. There was a snowstorm. We got 12 inches in one night. Jerry put the plows on the tractor and plowed us all out. It was getting toward Thanksgiving time. I had a chance to go to Hornell, so I got the turkey and the different things that I'd need for the day. Elizabeth came over the day before Thanksgiving and helped me set the table and do the things that I couldn't do alone. Jerry moved the things around in the room and set up the big table. Debbie and Robin came early and helped me dish up, so we had a nice time. We didn't have very many there, just Jerry's family and Deb's family, but it was real nice. We miss Bruce. I got my suitcases all packed and ready to go back with Pat and Bob. And we went over Christmas morning for breakfast with Debbie and Phil. And we had a good time, a nice breakfast, and we had a good dinner. Debbie got a very nice Christmas dinner. And we had a good time all day. We played 20 questions some of the time. That was a lot of fun. And I came back home and finished packing my suitcases and ready to go. We had our family get-together the 27th. There weren't as many there as there are some years. Bruce and Aaron, of course, were gone, and Mark's family had a conflict and couldn't come. Lee and Sherry got married and came. They got married that day, the Christmas day, and came. And Steve and Ingrid came, and that was different. Ingrid hadn't been there in a while. I got wonderful gifts, as I always do. And then the 28th, we started back to South Carolina. Had a very good trip all the way. Got here about 8 p.m. Ingrid and Steve went home another way because they had people to visit on the way. Pat, of course, didn't have school yet, so she got some of her Christmas taken care of. And they did the usual things that they do between Christmas and New Year's. They had a soup supper at church before prayer meeting. That was nice. I saw a lot of people I knew, and they're always so friendly. We went to a family's after the prayer meeting and played dominoes until midnight, and then she served eats. Rachel had a bunch of kids in here, and we didn't get home till 2 o'clock. Happy New Year. Things went on as usual in January. Pat had to go back to school, Rachel too. And Bob left for a trip to ski in Colorado. We were busy here evenings doing what we usually did. About this time we heard that Pastor Conley, their pastor since the beginning of this church, had died. He'd been sick for a long time, and Bob had gone to visit him in the hospital many times. He was very close to him. So it was a sad time for everybody. I went with him to the memorial service, but the funeral, of course, was private. It was too many people that would want to be there. Dick and Jerry called. They were on their way down and would be here to spend some time with Pat and Bob. So Pat got food ready for supper that night that Dick could eat, chicken stir-fry, and I made jello for dessert. And they came and we played dominoes and had a good visit. Carolyn called that Brianna had gotten through her surgery okay. Poor little thing, so much suffering for such a little tiny tot. So hard on Cindy, too. Dick and Jerry left Sunday morning to go to Central to church to see their friends there, and then on to Macon. He was going to stay there and help with the work of building the new children's home. Most of my spare time I spent making a quilt I started for David and Beth. I worked on that a lot of the time when I was here alone. There was a very good series of Bible studies at night, so Pat and I went together to those. They were very good. I enjoyed them so much. They had one session was a picnic that people all brought food to, so we ate at that. On the 13th of July, Dick and Jerry came back to go home. They stayed here for 2 or 3 days, and we had a good time. Geraldine took me shopping to get a few things I wanted to buy Pat's birthday present and things like that. And then they left to go home. Rachel went to Charleston to make the final arrangements for her schooling the next year. And that was, she was gone 2 or 3 days there. She got back home okay. I had a letter from Larry Siemens' daughter saying she was going on a short mission trip and wanted me to pray for her or give her money if I felt I could. So I sent her a check, and I wrote to Larry and told him how pleased I was that his family were so active in Christian work. And then I counted up, and I had 9 grandchildren who had gone on short mission trips. Pat and Bob went away to a bed and breakfast over the weekend for their anniversary, and so Rachel and I stayed here and held down the fort while they were gone. That was nice. I was glad they could go. They made arrangements for other people to pick me up for church. And there was a dinner at church that time, and they had special speakers because the daughter of Mrs. Bell, who founded the mission in Haiti, was going to speak and tell about her trip down there. She goes down and stays 6 to 8 weeks at a time to keep the work going, since Mrs. Bell has stayed home. Pat and Bob got back about 6:30 from their trip on Sunday night, and they had a real good time. They told about what they did, and one place they went, Ingrid and Steve surprised them by meeting them there, and they didn't know that. That was a nice surprise for them. Easter Sunday was the 12th, and we had a nice dinner after a beautiful church service. She made a sweet potato casserole, and we had ham and pineapple made in the crock pot, and potatoes, and rolls that I had made when I made bread that week, and ice cream with fresh strawberries for dessert. Bruce and Aaron got here the 18th, and they had trouble with their fuel pump all the way up. We went to church, and Bruce and Aaron went to the Wesleyan church again. We had baked potatoes and ham, and Penny and a friend came for dinner. I didn't go to church at night. I just stayed here and visited with Bruce and Aaron. Bruce took Pat to work the next morning so he could have the car to go get the parts he needed to fix the fuel pump. Erin was having a bad time with pain in her neck and back. It made it very unpleasant for her to try to travel and hurt so bad. She left Wednesday morning and had a good day driving. It rained a little. We stopped in the afternoon and a little north of Richmond, and at night we stayed at a 76 truck stop. We ate there and went to bed. We ate in the trailer. We started again the next morning. a nice trip, and we ate lunch in the trailer again. Bruce is so good to everybody. Aaron is hurting so bad, and we stopped at a place near and ate supper. Had a nice supper. It was only $3.95. Very cheap for such a good supper. We got to Wallace about 6. Bruce called Kathy, and she went and turned the heat on at my house, and then they took me up. It was the same as always at home. Evelyn came down and spent some time with me and invited me up to her house for supper. That was always nice to do. She brought me back home again. Church in Haskinville was always glad to be back to the old friends I've known and to the church service. It was very good. Jerry stopped in every once in a while. It was so nice to see him. I was so pleased to have him stop in. Noel was getting married again, and Bruce came and picked me up and took me out to the rehearsal at the church there and outside of Rochester. Jumbo's a pastor there now. He's filling in until they could get a pastor there, had left there. So we had the rehearsal, and then we went out for the rehearsal dinner. That was unusual. It was in a odd place where it looked like a barn, but it was a very nice place, and apparently a very busy place. There was lots of other people there besides just the rehearsal crowd. And then Bruce took me over to Carolyn's, where I stayed overnight. And then the next day he came and picked me up for the wedding. The wedding was very nice. The two little kids were the ring bearer and flower girl. And they had pretty flowers around the church. And it was all very nice. Jumbo had a nice ceremony, but of course he's not an ordained minister, so he actually couldn't marry them. So the pastor from the Penfield Church came down and just pronounced them man and wife, so it made it legal, but it was a little different. And then we went back to Carolyn's. We went to church there at Carolyn Lloyd's Church in Gates, and then we went to Andy's for dinner. That was nice. I enjoyed that so much. I stayed there all day. Their pastor had no evening service, as it was Mother's Day, and they thought they should spend the time with their mother at night. We all went to Holton, and the next day Dick was waiting for us there, and he took me to the graduation. We had to look for 3 places. We saved room for Deb and Phil. The whole ceremony was very nice. The graduation address was interesting. After it, Phil and Deb took me to Dick's, and they had a lot of food already. Deb brought ostrich burgers. We left at 2 to be here when Dale got home. That's the boy that Carolyn takes care of. I rested. I was tired, but I slept very well. Stayed here, and I had devotions with Carolyn Lloyd. Carolyn took me to Old Country Buffet, very much like the one that's in South Carolina. We had a real nice time, did a little shopping, and then had a quiet evening. Lloyd had an important meeting, so we didn't go to prayer meeting. We had, Thursday we went to Lilac Park, and we found a good place to park so that I could go with my cane and see the different flowers. And a little part of it, I couldn't walk around a lot. It was beautiful, but it was just at the peak of the lilacs. And they had beds and beds of pansies, too. And Friday we started home. It's a beautiful drive going down from Rochester to Dansville. All along the new highway is all covered with different kind of flowers and trees.